A young man with reddish hair stands before the grand facade of the Royal Remlis Academy's student dormitory. Inside, he reports to a noble lady about Charlotte Silva, a 15-year-old baron's daughter and saint candidate, who is apparently planning something for the graduation party. The lady, Rebecca Howard, presses him for details, confirming that Charlotte specifically used the term condemnation event. Rebecca's maid observes her lady from the side, noting that it is highly unusual to see her so visibly shaken. The maid, Parrot, reassures Rebecca that the tea is not poisoned, but Rebecca insists the situation is far more serious than just one of Charlotte's delusions. The young man, Amber, laughs it off, dismissing the ramblings of the crazy saint candidate as a common occurrence. But for Rebecca, the phrase condemnation event triggers a shocking realization, recognizing it as a trope from Japanese web novels, a setup she strangely remembers. She recalls the common plot. A beautiful, low-status heroine with incredible powers enrolls in a magic school and captures the hearts of the kingdom's elite young men. These powerful men invariably have fiancés who bully the heroine, women who are commonly known as villainous nobles. The truth crashes down on Rebecca as she remembers everything. She is living in an otome game from her past life, and she, Rebecca Howard, is the villainess fated for ruin. Her destiny is to have her engagement broken, be exiled, or even executed, with the game's adult version promising even more horrific ends, all stemming from the condemnation event. She cannot explain this sudden influx of memory to her attendants, struggling to regain her composure after such an uncharacteristic display of shock. Her mind flashes to the game's key visual, which depicts the villainess, her, being denounced at the graduation party by her fiancé, Prince Garrett. She calculates that with her previous 43 years of life added to her current 17, her mental age is now 60, and she remembers having been a married woman with a grown child. Rebecca reassures Peridot that she is fine, attributing her stability to constant self-healing magic, and now her strange, precocious childhood finally makes sense. A memory surfaces of her as a small child, being formally greeted by the entire household staff lined up before her. In the flashback, young Rebecca asks her father why all the servants of the Howard house bow their heads to her. Her father gently asks if her nurse prompted the question, but she insists the curiosity is her own. He agrees to explain, though he cautions that some of the concepts may still be too difficult for her to grasp. He begins by stating that the Howard family is one of the most powerful noble houses in the Leyndell Kingdom, with deep connections to the royal family. The Howards have a long and storied history, possessing the status, wealth, and influence to make almost anything possible. Her mother joins the conversation, adding that Rebecca's father worked hard to build upon their family's legacy, ensuring the prosperity of their lands and the happiness of their people. The nobles, her mother explains, rule through magic because the vast majority of people do not have magic, making the mages a distinct minority. Their ancestors understood that they could be overwhelmed by sheer numbers and chose to avoid persecution by using their powers to serve the common good. From that childhood conversation, Rebecca understood that becoming a respectable and exemplary lady was essential for her survival and future. Surrounded by adults, she was inundated with lessons on etiquette, culture, and the crucial control of her magical abilities. She realized that, aside from her inherited status, her personal skills were at the very bottom, a fact that ignited a fierce competitive fire within her. For her 5th birthday, having already devoured every book in the family library, she requested more specialized and advanced texts from her father. He obliged by hiring highly skilled tutors, and at age 6, she negotiated a reward for mastering the piano, a place by his side during his diplomatic missions. Having easily passed her piano trials, she made her official debut in society, formally introducing herself as Rebecca Howard. By age 7, she had recruited a promising agent named Onyx from her father's own intelligence network, making him the first of her personal spies, the Kage. She established the terms of their contract. He would be her hands and feet, gathering intelligence and protecting her from assassins, and he readily pledged his loyalty. Her agents, Onyx, Amber, Peridot, and Jade, were all given codenames corresponding to the color of their eyes. Her parents, amused by her unusual and ambitious requests, continued to support her, providing her with an education that far surpassed that of any ordinary noble daughter. Her younger brother watched her grow, filled with admiration for his cool and capable older sister. Now, in the present, she understands that it was a report from Amber, a subordinate trained by Onyx, that finally unlocked the memories of her reincarnation. She silently questions her fate, wondering what she could have possibly done to be cast as the villainess deserving of public condemnation. Amber playfully teases her, suggesting it's quite arrogant to immediately assume she is the target of Charlotte's planned condemnation. She chides him for his tone, while his inner thoughts reveal a past as an orphan that drives him to seek a master he can serve with absolute devotion. He has a difficult but endearing personality, and he quickly checks to see if his words have truly angered his mistress. Rebecca clarifies that her conclusion isn't based on arrogance but on experience. She frequently had to correct Charlotte's improper behavior until Prince Garrett warned her off 6 months prior. She praises Amber's competence, correctly guessing that he reported the information because he had analyzed the situation and deemed it a direct threat to her. With all the pieces falling into place, she closes her eyes and begins to strategize her next course of action. The memories of her past life in Japan, a world of cram schools and economic hardship, explain why her childhood behavior had always been so strange and out of place in this kingdom. She was an ordinary person then, a mother who saw her son into adulthood before embarking on a trip with her husband, which ended in a fatal accident. Though she worries about her husband's fate in that past life, she recalls it as a good and loving one, cut short at the age of 43. Having known true mutual love, she can no longer accept a political marriage as a mere duty. Her soul is now greedy for that same deep affection. The thought of being with anyone but her beloved past life husband feels impossible, yet she is currently bound by an engagement to the second prince, Garrett. She reconsiders recent events, noting Prince Garrett's growing distance and Charlotte's increased presence in the student council room, though she hadn't seen them as particularly close. A chill runs down her spine as she confronts the grim possibility that, as this is a game world, her downfall is a fixed scenario leading to exile or even death. Amber asks if her concern stems from fear of Charlotte or a selfish desire to cling to the status of princess, though he already knows the answer. Peridot offers to eliminate Charlotte immediately, but Rebecca forbids it, asserting that she must face Charlotte herself to resolve this event and will attend the party as a proud Howard. She resolves to seize control of the narrative. She will crush the condemnation event and be the one to initiate the breaking of her engagement to the prince. Her plan begins with a simple first step, as she turns to Amber and asks him to run an errand for her at the townhouse. Amber accepts with a show of feigned reluctance, prompting her to inwardly smile at his tsundere-like behavior. The narrative shifts to an establishing view of a grand and stately townhouse, the destination of Amber's errand. Rebecca informs Peridot of her decision, stating she has no intention of proceeding with the political marriage and will declare the engagement broken at the party, instructing her to begin preparations. She reflects that her true self, shaped by a past life of being loved and in love, is possessive and cannot bear the thought of sharing a partner. That profound belief in monogamous love is etched deeply into her very soul. She confidently tells Peridot not to worry, as her plan is to enjoy a leisurely and independent single life after the engagement is formally dissolved. The sudden possibility of a future that doesn't involve being a princess fills her with a profound sense of satisfaction and freedom. In fact, the mere thought of being intimate with anyone other than her husband from her previous life is physically repulsive to her. She steels her resolve, intending not just to deflect the coming attack but to turn the tables and metaphorically burn Charlotte to the ground. The following day, at the graduation party, Rebecca notes with detachment that Prince Garrett didn't even pick her up, sending a substitute instead. Her escort is revealed to be her own younger brother, 15-year-old David Howard, who is currently going through a rebellious phase. She is momentarily stunned to see her brother David standing there in the prince's place. Rebecca calmly assesses the situation. Prince Garrett's indifference is so complete that he would send her brother as a stand-in, and her own obliviousness to this fact is something she must reflect upon. As David escorts her into the grand hall, her thoughts turn to his safety, knowing that in these stories, the villainess's family often shares her unfortunate fate. She remembers another critical event. Months ago, Prince Garrett had gifted Charlotte a new dress after hers was ruined, an act of significant romantic implication which she had overlooked at the time. It becomes clear to her now that the only reason her deeply possessive soul could ignore such a blatant sign was because she had never truly been in love with the prince. She sees Prince Garrett across the room, noting his handsome appearance in formal attire, and clinically acknowledges that he is a suitable capture target for an otome game. Her gaze sweeps over the other male leads of the game, the magic warrior Evan Hawke and the swordsman Brandon Garcia, both of whom, she notes, already have fiancés. She finds it odd that for supposed high-spec capture targets, they seem rather unremarkable, wondering if the game's fantasy settings are being tempered by a dose of reality. She reminds herself that while she was an avid reader of fanfiction based on this game, her knowledge of the original source material is incomplete. What she does know is that this world is surprisingly realistic. Love marriages are not uncommon, and mutually agreed upon broken engagements are not scandalous, making a public denunciation a foolish, self-destructive act. After their obligatory first dance, she coolly dismisses Prince Garrett, telling him to dance the second waltz with another lady as she wonders if the infamous condemnation event will happen at all. As she stands aside, Lady Samantha approaches and asks if Rebecca will begin her queen consort training at the palace after graduation, though she adds that Rebecca's manners are already perfect. Other ladies gather around, thanking Rebecca because her presence at the academy was the reason the kingdom's top etiquette instructor, Mrs. Comins, agreed to teach there. Her conversation is cut short as she spots Prince Garrett and Charlotte across the dance floor, still together even though the first song has ended and partners should have been switched, a flagrant breach of etiquette. A mental note identifies the girl as Charlotte Silva, a baron's daughter and the game's self-proclaimed heroine. With a jolt, Rebecca understands that the moment has arrived. The condemnation event is about to begin. The final page is a quiet, illustrative portrait of a young Rebecca sitting with her even younger brother as they look at a book together. In a corner of the grand dance hall, a romance drama begins to play out. The leading lady of this performance is, as one might guess, Lady Charlotte. From behind her fan, Rebecca observes that Prince Garrett appears quite troubled, as if Charlotte's efforts are not having their intended effect. The prince's expression conveys nothing but annoyance at the unfolding situation. Charlotte suddenly clutches at the prince, stumbling into his arms in a theatrical display. A nearby lady named Sophie expresses her disgust at Charlotte's shameless and seductive gesture, but Rebecca advises her to remain calm. While the prince seems to be attempting to gently disengage, his actions only appear to encourage Charlotte's advances. As the music for the second dance begins, another guest remarks that dancing twice with the same partner is a right reserved exclusively for engaged couples. Rebecca admits to herself that she was foolish to expect any common sense from Charlotte, before turning to her maid and asking for a report on the girl's reputation. The maid, Parrot, returns with information gathered from the other servants, who have nicknamed Charlotte the crazy saint candidate. Another popular description for her among the staff is an eccentric girl with a habit of lying. Rebecca reflects that, despite these damning rumors, Charlotte still officially holds the title of saint candidate. Peridot, however, insists on providing her lady with precise and accurate information beyond mere servant gossip. An internal monologue clarifies that a saint candidate must possess the holy light attribute. Rebecca herself has a water attribute specializing in healing, so she does not qualify. Amidst the drama, she catches sight of her younger brother glaring at her from across the room for some unknown reason. A saint candidate who fully awakens becomes a true saint, a figure of immense importance who brings prosperity to the kingdom, making it a grave insult to label one as crazy. Yet, Rebecca understands the sentiment, because this is not just a game world but also the grounds of the highly disciplined and elite Royal Remless Academy. The Academy is the kingdom's finest educational institution, where young nobles spend 3 years mastering magic, etiquette, and leadership to support the realm. Sending a child to Remless is a significant status symbol for noble families, a source of such pride that some even go into debt to afford it. Therefore, all students of the Academy, Rebecca included, are constantly aware of the heavy responsibilities they carry. With this context in mind, Rebecca prepares to explain precisely why Charlotte's behavior on the dance floor was so outrageous. The etiquette of a ball dictates that one may only dance with the same partner twice if they are engaged. By doing so in front of Rebecca, Garrett's actual fiancée, they were issuing a direct and public challenge. Rebecca grips her fan, her knuckles white with controlled fury. The orchestra continues to play, providing a tense soundtrack to the unfolding scene in the ballroom. She can tell from Prince Garrett's increasingly desperate expression that this second dance was not his idea. Even so, it is infuriating that a prince of the realm cannot properly manage the advances of one young woman. She dismisses the idea of having the music stopped, as that would only create a bigger scene and draw more unwanted attention. The other guests have already started to whisper, expressing pity for Rebecca, the Academy's celebrated moon princess, for suffering such a public insult. The prince's companions, his future retainers, close ranks around the pair, either to shield them from view or to support Charlotte's move. If their aim is simply to protect the prince from scandal, they will face minor social repercussions. But if they are actively siding with Charlotte against the prince's fiancée, their own reputations will be ruined. Rebecca knows that her own social standing is now at risk. If she allows this insult to pass unchallenged, she will be perceived as weak and become a target for mockery and bullying. Even though her plan is to break the engagement and leave society anyway, her pride will not allow her to back down from a direct challenge. The other nobles watch the scene with rapt attention, recognizing it for what it is: a practical, real-world test of social and political maneuvering on their graduation day. Annoyed that this is far more complicated than the simple condemnation she had prepared for, Rebecca steps forward with a graceful smile, complimenting the couple on their lovely dance. She masterfully diffuses the tension by offering a plausible excuse, suggesting Charlotte's sleeve must have caught on the prince's button, turning the breach of etiquette into an amusing accident. Her internal monologue, however, is scathing as she thinks about how their little spectacle has made them the center of negative gossip that will be remembered for years to come. The prince, desperate for a way out, readily agrees with her fabricated explanation, unwittingly playing his part in the script she is now writing. She adds a final touch, pretending to be a jealous fiancé as she sweetly asks the prince not to let it happen again, a veiled warning he cannot ignore. With that, the script is complete. She has successfully reframed a public humiliation as a charming spat between a loving, engaged couple. But before she can savor her victory, Charlotte shatters the carefully constructed narrative, loudly proclaiming that Prince Garrett intends to break his engagement with Rebecca. A collective gasp ripples through the ballroom as all eyes turn to the source of the scandalous outburst. Charlotte shouts again, asking if Rebecca didn't hear that the prince is nullifying their betrothal, while Rebecca calmly notes how her voice echoes across the now silent hall. The orchestra conductor, demonstrating true professionalism, quickly directs his musicians to play a soft, gentle melody to fill the horribly awkward silence. The prince tries to placate Charlotte, telling her this is not the appropriate venue for such a conversation, but he critically fails to deny her accusation. Rebecca feels a sense of relief, as her returned memories mean she has no desire to marry the prince anyway. She thinks that if the prince truly wants to be with this unfortunate girl, then he is welcome to her, though it is not a choice she would personally recommend. That being said, there is absolutely no reason for her to be cast as the villain in their love story, especially based on false charges. She decides that the responsibility for this embarrassing public display should fall squarely on Charlotte, who insisted on forcing this condemnation event. Charlotte, completely missing the subtle insult in the prince's formal address, launches into a tirade, accusing Rebecca of repeated acts of harassment born of jealousy. She then brazenly claims that Evan, Brandon, and even Rebecca's brother David will act as her defenders. The young men exchange uncomfortable looks, clearly not on Rebecca's side but also unwilling to throw in their lot with the unstable Charlotte. Charlotte, however, misinterprets their hesitation as a romantic squabble over who gets the honor of defending her. She then escalates her accusations to a shocking degree, claiming Rebecca hired thugs to attack her, a statement so scandalous it silences the entire hall, where the king himself is in attendance. Realizing the situation has spiraled out of control, Rebecca considers that she might need to offer Charlotte an escape route for her own self-preservation. She offers Charlotte a final chance: retract her statements and apologize now, and the truth will not be exposed, but Charlotte furiously rejects the offer. Instead, Charlotte makes her own grand declaration, announcing that Prince Garrett will propose to her, Saint Charlotte Silva. Rebecca mentally dissects the absurdity of the statement, first noting that Charlotte has no authority to demand anything, let alone the annulment of a royal engagement. She also notes that Charlotte is not yet a saint, merely a candidate, and her desperate proposal attempt reveals that the prince has not made any such promises, which slightly raises Rebecca's opinion of his integrity. Rebecca concludes that she has given Charlotte more than enough chances to de-escalate, and that the girl seems tragically determined to destroy her own future. Deciding that Charlotte must be suffering from some mental affliction to so eagerly seek her own ruin, Rebecca prepares to launch the counterattack that will secure her freedom. Addressing the king directly, Rebecca apologizes for the scene but states that such baseless accusations in a public forum demand a rebuttal, asking for permission to prove her innocence. The king simply says, "I permit it," and Rebecca thanks him, a confident smile spreading across her face as she prepares to begin. She thinks to herself that if a villainess is what Charlotte wants, then a villainess is what she will get. She begins by dismantling the claims of meanness, stating that she only ever offered standard and necessary corrections for Charlotte's repeated breaches of noble etiquette. She poses a rhetorical question to the room, asking if it is not natural for a fiancé to feel slighted by another woman's improper advances, framing her actions as basic decency that Charlotte clearly lacked. Next, she targets the accusations of theft, turning them back on Charlotte by questioning just how many items she reported stolen, simply to receive valuable gifts from the prince, gifts that were later sold for cash. Charlotte and the prince are both visibly stunned by the allegation that the items were sold. When Charlotte demands proof, Rebecca calmly asserts her authority as the prince's fiancée, stating that her own movements are constantly monitored by guards who can attest to her innocence, while she in turn keeps a close eye on all matters concerning the prince. She reveals that her own agents have already purchased back some of the items Charlotte sold, but Charlotte can only sputter that the witnesses must have been threatened into lying. At that moment, another lady speaks up, corroborating Rebecca's account by describing a scandalously revealing dress that Charlotte had improperly altered herself. Two more young women, Charlotte's dormmates, step forward to support Rebecca's version of events concerning the dress, stating that they were the ones who reported the issue to Rebecca as their dorm leader. Rebecca thanks Sophie and Samantha for their testimony, noting with a sort of detached admiration that Charlotte remains defiant even as the case against her becomes overwhelming. Finally, she addresses the most serious accusation, calmly stating that if a young woman sneaks out of the girls' dormitory at night, it is only natural that she would be apprehended by the guards. A brief flashback shows the guards detaining a struggling Charlotte outside a dormitory window. Rebecca explains that she had the guards handle the matter discreetly to protect Charlotte from public scandal, expressing her deep disappointment that this act of kindness was twisted into an accusation of assault. She declares that by ruining the graduation for everyone, Charlotte has proven herself unfit to be a princess, a conclusion that a wise man like Prince Garrett has surely already reached. Looking directly at the prince, she states that she takes his failure to deny the engagement annulment with the utmost seriousness. Therefore, she formally accepts the breaking of their engagement and announces her intention to retire to her family's estates. A wave of shock passes through the crowd at her sudden and decisive move. Rebecca knows her justification is weak, but in the rigid hierarchy of noble society, it is difficult to refuse a superior who is taking responsibility for a perceived failure. In her mind, this is the perfect outcome. Her engagement is dissolved without scandal, the prince's role is minimized, and if he still wants to mentor Charlotte, she wishes him the best of luck. However, the king intervenes, declaring that the matter requires a formal investigation and a separate hearing will be held to ascertain the facts. He then issues a royal command. Until the matter is officially resolved, no one is to speak of what transpired here. The entire assembly bows in unison, accepting the king's decree. Prince Garrett thinks to himself that this is a nightmare, to be publicly rejected by his own fiancée at the graduation party. He knows the king has only postponed the decision. He hadn't planned to break the engagement yet, and now he'll face the wrath of his mother and older brother. He sees Marquis Howard, Rebecca's father, and panics, wishing the man wouldn't look at him with such an intense gaze. He turns to Charlotte and blames her for the whole mess, though he admits he also lacked consideration, and then instructs Evan and David to escort her back to the dormitory. Garrett clarifies to himself that despite the misunderstanding, he is not in love with Charlotte and would never consider marrying her in Rebecca's place. His only goal has been to make Rebecca fall in love with him. For the past 3 years, he has dedicated himself to making that goal a reality. He cannot let Rebecca go free. He needs to keep her bound by their engagement, under the protection of the royal family, to ward off other men. This was a secret pact made with his older brother, Ethan, and he wonders how he will explain this failure. He recalls his initial reaction to the engagement, questioning the arrangement since royalty has no freedom in marriage. His mother had insisted on the engagement to secure Rebecca before any bad bugs could get to her, overriding his desire to focus on his studies. At his brother Ethan's engagement party, the king and queen were impressed by Rebecca, noting her intelligence and charm surpassed the rumors. The queen found it odd that Rebecca's parents hadn't presented her at court as a potential bride candidate sooner. The king mused on how to convince the stubborn Marquis Howard to agree to the match, as Rebecca was no longer a candidate for the crown prince. The Marquis was known to be so attached to his daughter that he was reluctant to marry her into the royal family where he would see her less. The king and queen discussed how to approach the matter, noting that while the father doted on his daughter, the mother was the queen's close friend. Garrett asked why Marquis Howard was so hesitant. Ethan, the crown prince, was more surprised that the child the Marquis frequently took on diplomatic missions was Rebecca, not her brother David, and was impressed by her accumulated skill and connections at only 14. The king decided that since the crown prince Ethan was already engaged, Garrett was the only suitable match for such a remarkable young woman, and he would have to grow to be worthy of her. Garrett sits at the dinner table, looking sullen. He felt slighted by the king's words, as if he were an inferior option being granted the compromise of marrying the brilliant Rebecca. The trouble began the day he first met Rebecca, as he told his brother nothing was wrong. He formally announced his engagement to his brother, stating his fiancée was the 14-year-old Rebecca Howard. His older brother, Crown Prince Ethan, congratulated him and asked to be introduced to his future sister-in-law. Garrett was surprised his brother wasn't shocked, but Ethan explained that Rebecca's reputation for excellence had already reached him and encouraged Garrett not to be intimidated. Ethan advised him that if he wanted to find a true partner, he should seek one out for himself. Garrett misunderstood this as advice to find a mistress. He wondered if his brother had found his own, true partner, and blushed at the thought of falling in love himself. Ethan, seeing his brother's disinterest in Rebecca, insisted on arranging a formal meeting between the two. At their first meeting, Rebecca introduced herself formally to Crown Prince Ethan. Garrett looked on, confused by his brother's intense stare. The image focuses on Rebecca's smiling face. Ethan took Rebecca's hand. He then made a vow directly to Rebecca, "You will fall in love with me." Garrett was shocked by his brother's bold declaration to his fiancée. Rebecca, unfazed, replied that of course she would, as she is a loyal citizen who reveres the royal family. From that moment, Garrett made it his highest priority to fulfill his brother's vow for him. He writes a letter to his brother, assuring him that things have been going well with Rebecca since the engagement. Over time, through their interactions, he developed a deep sense of camaraderie and trust with Rebecca, like that between siblings or comrades in arms, finally feeling he could do something for his brother's sake. His older brother was his hero, charismatic, skilled, and kind, always patient with him. He and his brother secretly planned to eventually annul the engagement, but first, they needed to ensure no one else could have Rebecca. Then, into this complex plan, came Charlotte Silva, a saint candidate whom he, as a royal, was tasked to support. Charlotte introduced herself with bright, cheerful energy, asking him to call her by her first name. He was taken aback by her forwardness. When he met her, Rebecca was also present, and he noted that Charlotte was the rumored saint candidate, to which Rebecca offered a polite but formal greeting. Rebecca introduced herself coolly as Marquis Howard's daughter and his fiancée. She then politely but firmly advised Charlotte that for the sake of her own reputation, she should wait to be addressed by the prince rather than initiating contact herself. Garrett and Charlotte were both taken aback by her directness. He was shocked that she was unaware of the basic etiquette that a person of lower status does not address a higher status person without permission. He learns the specifics about saint candidates. They are rare even among magic users and must undergo an awakening to stabilize their holy power. However, there is a risk that during this awakening, a candidate can fall into darkness, their holy power inverting into a destructive force. A fallen saint brings disaster to the kingdom, while a true saint brings great benefit, which is why candidates are handled with extreme caution, an explanation that satisfies Garrett. He concluded that Charlotte's lack of social graces stemmed from being raised outside the strict confines of noble society, likely sheltered in a temple, making her pure and naive. Furthermore, Charlotte was the very first saint candidate to be welcomed into the academy. This was due to recent research suggesting that a candidate's awakening depends on their own qualities, not their environment, making it safe for them to live outside a temple. He wondered why, if she could live anywhere, she was sent to the academy at this specific time. His brother had explained it was likely due to pressure from the court to hopefully marry a saint to Garrett, as historically, many royals had married saints. Garrett felt conflicted, as the kingdom is monogamous, and he already had his promise with his brother regarding Rebecca. He couldn't determine if the court's pressure was for the good of the country or a roundabout political move by other nobles to free up Rebecca for their own sons. Even if he were to eventually dissolve his engagement with Rebecca, he had no intention of marrying Charlotte, yet he couldn't simply stand by and watch the naive girl become isolated in noble society. He felt it was his duty as a gentleman and a royal to protect a woman in need of aid. This led to a series of frustrating interactions, with Charlotte being overly familiar and the other noble girls reacting with disdain. When Rebecca pointed out Charlotte's lack of decorum, Charlotte retorted by citing a school rule about all students being equal. Rebecca calmly explained that the rule was created to prevent high-ranking nobles from abusing their lower-ranking peers, not as an excuse to ignore all social hierarchy. This culminated in Garrett stepping in and telling Rebecca to leave Charlotte alone, to which Rebecca replied that she had a duty as an upperclassman to guide her juniors. Rebecca pointed out that Charlotte's overly friendly behavior with men was causing problems for other students with fiancés, so Garrett took responsibility for handling the matter. Rebecca simply replied that she didn't mind. He wished she would show even a little jealousy, but was also glad for her trust in him. But he felt a sense of dissatisfaction. He felt their relationship was more like that of comrades-in-arms than fiancés, and wondered if this was truly for the best. To prevent animosity towards Saint candidates in general, he decided to take Charlotte under the student council's wing to minimize the damage, but she immediately began accusing Rebecca of sabotage. The other student council members, who all had partners, were annoyed by Charlotte's clinginess and constant complaints. Even Rebecca's brother David was fed up, privately calling Charlotte a stupid woman but knowing better than to say it to her face. The situation became untenable. Garrett and the teachers decided that for the good of the student body, Charlotte had to be disciplined. The plan was for Charlotte to be transferred to a temple after the graduation ceremony, but she resisted by launching her ill-fated condemnation event. Charlotte fumes in a separate room, annoyed that she was removed from the party while Rebecca looked smug, as if everything was going according to her plan. She sits at a table, reasoning that game mechanics should have twisted the events to make it seem like the villainous, Rebecca, was the one lying, but Brandon's interference ruined her grand condemnation event. She sighs that being a desirable woman is hard, recalling that the prince's eyes looked as dull as a dead fish during the confrontation. She deludes herself into thinking the prince's shock was a sign of deep jealousy over Brandon, proving his overwhelming love for her. She wonders about the grumpy, brown-haired man who brought her to this room, noting his annoying resemblance to Rebecca, before complaining that the condemnation event didn't go as planned, as the heroine should always win. She stomps her foot in frustration, believing that all otome games are supposed to follow this simple success formula. Two men in another room overhear her and wonder what an otome game is as Charlotte admires her own reflection, noting her pink blonde hair, flawless skin, and aquamarine eyes. She thinks about how cute she is now, a far cry from her previous life, and how she's been loved and adored just for existing, both at home and at the academy. She is certain of one thing. She's convinced that in this world, a person's happiness is directly proportional to how attractive their face is. A map shows her birthplace, the remote southern lands of the Landel Kingdom, home to the barony of Silva. Her parents had a loving marriage but struggled to conceive, so when she was born, they doted on her excessively, which she feels is only natural since this world exists for her to redo her life. She recalls hitting her head at age 13, which is when she remembered her past life and realized she was the heroine in an otome game world, a guaranteed ticket to a romance-filled life. The classic otome game trope, she believed, was for the low-status heroine to triumph over the high-status villainess and marry the prince, a simple and clear path to victory. She thought otome games were supposed to be easy, but now worries about the possibility of a bad ending. She recalls that the one who was actually obsessed with this game in her past life was her older sister. In her past life, she was the unattractive second daughter in an ordinary middle-class Japanese family. Her older sister, however, was considered pretty and was also a bookworm. She was constantly compared to her prettier, smarter, and older sister, which she felt was unfair. No one, not teachers, neighbors, or relatives, ever praised her. Her sister would get new clothes while she got hand-me-downs, and her mother would tell her to focus on her appearance instead of complaining. Her father tried to be comforting by saying everyone has their own good points, but she believed that in the end, the world revolves around looks. She resented her popular and successful sister for being into nerdy things like otome games. Her past life ended miserably. On what should have been her first date, she discovered it was a prank for a punishment game and was killed in an accident while crying on her way home. She believes God must have pitied her miserable past life and granted her this new, beautiful life as a reward, certain she is the heroine since the character's name matched hers. This belief was solidified when she discovered she possessed the holy power of the light attribute. She learned that this power was rare and revered, and that upon awakening, she would become a saint, though she had to agree to study magic control at a temple after her parents pleaded with her. Her parents sadly agreed that until it was time for her to leave, they would spoil her as much as possible. She didn't pay much attention to her sister's ramblings about the game, so she doesn't actually remember any of the plot details or who the capture targets are. But thanks to a game correction, the kingdom's policy changed, allowing her to attend the academy instead of the temple, a clear sign that the world was bending to her will. Convinced it was her destiny to meet the second prince at the academy and become his princess, she persuaded her parents to find the money to send her there. Her plan was simple: eat delicious food, wear pretty dresses, be admired by everyone, and have fun. This world was made for her happiness, so all she had to do was act cute and get what she wanted, and the second prince was the perfect target since he had less responsibility than the crown prince. As for his fiancée, she was just an obstacle to be kicked aside, because she is the protagonist of this world. After enrolling, she hired a plain-looking maid named Millie to be her foil and to help her by selling the gifts she received from the prince. She believed she didn't need to study or make friends. Her role was to be the tragic, beautiful girl who bravely endures bullying, which would only make her more appealing. She twisted Rebecca's attempts to correct her etiquette into acts of villainy, like calling Rebecca petty for not inviting her to a tea party and claiming Rebecca ruined her sexy dress on purpose. She thought everything was going smoothly. The harassment she faced was just a standard game event that helped her get closer to the prince and the student council. The fact that the king had intervened and the mood had turned against her was likely just a way to protect her from the hostile atmosphere in the ballroom. Since Rebecca had agreed to the annulment, the outcome was still what she wanted, even if the event played out differently than she'd imagined. Still, she's not satisfied and vows to make Rebecca pay for humiliating her, believing that as the world's chosen one, her ultimate happiness is guaranteed. Rebecca's father apologizes for his lack of consideration, but she thinks he is being ridiculously sentimental about the failed condemnation party. Her agents discuss the situation, with Onyx finding the term condemnation party amusing, while Amber questions why the engagement hasn't been officially dissolved yet. Peridot suggests it's because Charlotte hasn't yet met the standard to be a new fiancée. Rebecca's father notes that Prince Garrett is under immense pressure from the king and queen and is likely stalling for time to re-educate Charlotte, but he won't allow Rebecca to be used for that purpose. Rebecca reflects that her past self, before remembering her previous life, would have likely agreed to Garrett's request out of a sense of duty. But now, even a fake engagement is out of the question, as her heart already belongs to her husband from her past life. Her father, who is eager for the annulment, takes charge of writing the official response to the palace, telling Rebecca not to worry about it. Rebecca decides to enjoy her holiday and considers what to do next, thinking about activities she avoided before, like horseback riding. She is seen riding through the countryside with her attendants. She observes a man and a woman on her lands. She recognizes two men speaking with each other. She narrows her eyes, focusing on the situation. Later, while enjoying a bath filled with flower petals, Peridot informs her that another bouquet has arrived from Prince Garrett. Peridot worries that stripping the flowers for her bath is a waste, but Rebecca dismisses her concern, saying the mansion would otherwise be buried in flowers, and asks why her agents are all gathered. Onyx and Amber report that someone has been snooping around her, and Amber immediately suspects Charlotte is plotting something. Peridot adds that there are rumors of Charlotte vowing to beat the villainess to a pulp. Rebecca is mildly amused by this news. She decides to let things be for a week, wanting to enjoy her vacation before dealing with the official annulment. She muses that while she isn't skilled in attack magic, having free time often makes one want to start something. The narration explains that her 4 shadows each have a specialty. Parrot, under her cover as a maid, is a master of poisons. Rebecca asks her maid, Emma, who is a skilled apothecary, if she can create some self-defense items that can buy her time to escape an attack. It's revealed that Emma tests the poisons she creates on her own body. Rebecca offers to use healing magic on her, but Emma insists she is far from her limit. A flashback to when Rebecca was 13 shows Emma beginning to serve her small doses of poison to build her immunity, a necessity for high-ranking nobles. This is a long-standing tradition in the Howard family, done under a doctor's supervision, and her father jokes about his own comical experiences with the training. A young Rebecca sips the poison tea. When Rebecca asks why Emma is also drinking the poison, Emma declares she would never serve her mistress something she hadn't tested herself. Rebecca reflects on Emma's fierce loyalty, which she considers heavy class even among her devoted agents, while Emma lies in bed, recovering from pushing her limits. Emma comes from a side branch of a family of doctors who have long served the Howards, and her specialized skills mean she is exempt from many regular maid duties, giving her plenty of free time to develop new concoctions. Emma and another maid laugh together, pleased with their work. Rebecca now has a collection of potent concoctions and a plan for how to administer them to her enemies. Preparing for the assassins she expects Charlotte to send becomes an amusing pastime for her and Emma. Later, Charlotte is confronted by 2 officials from the academy. The officials look stern and unimpressed. One of them informs Charlotte that they want her to leave Remlis Academy. Charlotte is shocked, thinking they want her to graduate early, but they clarify that they want to transfer her to a temple to continue her studies. She is bewildered and asks why. The official states that if she truly feels she did nothing wrong at the party, then that feeling itself is proof that the academy is not the right place for her. Charlotte gets angry, remembering the incident and complaining that while there are people she doesn't get along with at the academy, she also has many fans. The official ignores her outburst and informs her that she will be transferred to the prestigious Alaya Temple, which serves the royal family. Charlotte is immediately thrilled, realizing this is a temple for princesses with holy powers. Her agents later report to Rebecca that Charlotte will be leaving the academy next week, likely a move arranged by Prince Garrett, as the Alaya Temple has deep ties to the royal family. Rebecca is pleased with this development. Her agents give her a look, surprised by her good mood after she had them enthusiastically preparing poisons. Rebecca muses that while she's exasperated with Charlotte, as a woman with a mental age of 60, she has no desire to actively cause a young girl's ruin. She thinks that if Charlotte can find her place at the temple, it will be for the best, as she was likely isolated and lonely at the academy. However, Prince Garrett and the temple officials cannot forget the possibility that Charlotte could fall to darkness, and for the good of the kingdom, her saintly education must continue no matter what. Rebecca notes that Prince Garrett, while seemingly weak-willed, is not incompetent and understands his duty, but she still wants the engagement dissolved quickly. Having enjoyed her vacation, she decides it's time to get back to business, like managing the Howard family's domain. Onyx interrupts her thoughts, informing her that the problem is far from solved. He reports that before entering the temple, Charlotte cashed in all the gifts she received from the prince and is already using the money to plot against Rebecca. Rebecca's eyes widen in shock and realization. Onyx explains that Charlotte has connected with underground merchants, as no legitimate business would risk dealing in the resale of a noble's possessions, and Rebecca realizes any pity she felt for the girl was foolish. She had intended to leave the matter to Prince Garrett, but now that her opponent has connections to professional criminals, she must handle it herself. Peridot once again suggests eliminating the saint candidate, but Rebecca forbids it, stating she has no intention of becoming a villainess. However, she decides that since an invitation has been extended, she should accept it. Her intelligence network, the K, begins their investigation into Charlotte's new associates. The scene shows them gathering information in town. After consulting with her father and mobilizing his intelligence network, Yami, they uncover the full extent of the operation and contact the royal guards assigned to the prince. Her agents inform the royal guards that in 3 days, Rebecca will go out incognito with a single guard to test a new product. They frame it as a demonstration for a new Howard family business venture, hinting that there might be a performance, a coded message to leak to any spies in their midst. The royal guards are intrigued by the prospect of a new, self-defense product for women and agree to cooperate, hoping for a reward from the Howard family. Rebecca muses that this will be a perfect field test for her new products. Emma arrives with his self-defense goods, and both she and Rebecca are dressed as common town girls for their outing. They set off in a humble-looking covered wagon. As they travel through a forest, the disguised Howard guard driving the wagon feigns terror as hooded figures emerge, just as predicted. The assassins appear, surprised by the driver's premature cry for help. The driver wishes Rebecca good luck before theatrically fleeing the scene, leaving the assassins bewildered. The assassins turn their attention to the wagon, with their leader noting that Rebecca is even more beautiful than the rumors claimed, calling her the Moon Princess. Rebecca denies the embarrassing nickname, but the assassins take her denial as confirmation that she is indeed their target. She reflects that with her 60-year-old mind, she finds the boyish posturing of these young men almost cute. The leader tells her not to worry, as they won't kill her, though they will subject her to humiliation worse than death. She asks if they know who she is, and they confirm she is the prince's former fiancé who will soon be stripped of her rank. She calmly corrects them, stating that her engagement has not yet been officially dissolved, meaning she is still the prince's fiancé. Therefore, by attacking her, they are attacking someone with a status equivalent to royalty. And as a weak woman being threatened with swords, she has every right to defend herself with full force. The assassins laugh off her warning and charge, tired of her talking. Rebecca simply says, "That's right." As they swing their swords, she moves with surprising speed. She kicks one in the shins and dodges another, causing a cloud of powder to erupt from a device on her ankle. She declares that they will now experience the self-defense goods she developed with Emma for fun. She reveals a small, decorated tube, introducing it as the repelling Berchon. She fires the device, spraying a liquid directly into an attacker's face. Emma watches eagerly, asking Rebecca to carefully verify which poison she's using. Rebecca thinks that Emma is being reckless. As the other two men are not so easily subdued, Emma declares that she will take care of them. A few minutes later, the assassins are on the ground, retching and incapacitated. Emma prods one of them, asking for a detailed description of the pain he's feeling for her research. Rebecca analyzes the performance of their weapon, noting that it needs improved range and a rapid-fire function, before deciding to heal the poor men. The assassins cry out that they've been tricked, as their client never mentioned she was still engaged. While healing one of them, Rebecca admonishes them, stating that any commission to assault a woman, regardless of her status, is not a legitimate job. She tells them that they have a conscience and should use this opportunity to find honest work. She then asks them where and when they were supposed to meet their client, and one of them, now completely intimidated, spills the details. Later, her agents lead her to the Lovebirds Cage Inn, the rendezvous point, which she recognizes as the setting for one of the game's worst endings. Amber notes that the inn is a high-class establishment for nobles with certain tastes, complete with soundproof rooms, and Rebecca agrees it's the perfect place for a long talk with Charlotte. She reflects that she has never actually had a proper heart-to-heart conversation with the girl. An agent reports that the Saint candidate has arrived. Inside the tavern, a patron tells the hooded Charlotte that the Moon Princess is waiting upstairs. Rebecca anticipates the meeting, knowing she has a truth serum she developed with Emma, and wonders if the show has already begun. Rebecca sits calmly at a table in the inn, waiting for her guests to arrive. She greets Charlotte warmly, remarking that they haven't seen each other since the graduation ceremony. Charlotte stares, wide-eyed and speechless. The door slams shut behind her, revealing Amber and another of Rebecca's agents, trapping her in the room. Rebecca offers her a seat and some special tea from her townhouse, the liquid laced with a pleasant-smelling essence designed to make one talkative. She encourages Charlotte not to be shy, noting how delicious the tea is. Charlotte finally snaps, agreeing to go along with Rebecca's charade but demanding to know why a villainess like her is in such a shady inn. Rebecca notes the fleeting look of panic that crossed Charlotte's face, a clear sign that she knows more than she's letting on. Under the influence of the truth serum, Charlotte begins to mutter that this wasn't supposed to happen, that she should be experiencing the true end of the prince's route by now. Rebecca feigns ignorance, asking Charlotte to clarify what she means by bug, past life, and true end. Rebecca knows the truth serum has taken effect, and now Charlotte will tell her everything. She calmly explains that she came here to have a frank, heart-to-heart conversation. She suspects that someone else must be manipulating the childish Charlotte, feeding her these strange ideas and directing her to hire ruffians. Rebecca stares intently, waiting for the full story to come out. Charlotte spills everything. She is a reincarnated person from a country called Japan. This world is an otome game, and she was reborn as the game's heroine. Rebecca reveals that she has already investigated Charlotte's background, noting the immense debt her parents took on to send her to the academy and questioning if Charlotte understands the dishonor this brings. She slides a document across the table, and Charlotte asks what it is. Charlotte dismisses the debt, boasting that it's no problem since she'll just marry Prince Garrett, the most handsome and best capture target for marrying into wealth. She babbles on about how she and the prince are a perfect match because their hair and eye colors are similar, showing no actual affection for his personality. Rebecca realizes with dawning horror that Charlotte never truly loved her older brother, Ethan. Charlotte complains that her plans to become a princess at the temple were ruined by the trash gifts from the prince, which she sold to hire thugs for revenge. Rebecca coldly replies that she is already aware of Charlotte's troublesome friends. Charlotte looks up, startled by Rebecca's words. She asks with a glimmer of hope if Rebecca believes her, if she accepts that she is the heroine. To everyone's shock, Rebecca says, "I believe you." Charlotte and her own maid stare in disbelief. The narration explains that the truth serum isn't meant to be so dramatically effective. Its potency was amplified by Charlotte's desperation to be understood. Rebecca thinks that Charlotte, who has been bottling up her secret, is now speaking with the unfiltered honesty of a young Japanese girl. She points out that while many paths to happiness were prepared for Charlotte, she has squandered every one of them through her own choices. Charlotte stares blankly, the words not sinking in. Rebecca states plainly that Charlotte's own decisions have led her to this current predicament. Charlotte lashes out, denying she did anything wrong, but Rebecca retorts that she has done plenty of unnecessary things. Rebecca says calmly that doing nothing is precisely the problem. She reveals her own secret. She too is from Japan, a compatriot who understands everything Charlotte has said about her past life and the game. She explains that this world is real, filled with people struggling to live, and that Charlotte, as the supposed heroine, was given many gifts and choices that she failed to use through her own lack of effort. She questions why Charlotte wasted all her advantages, her beauty, her privileged environment, and her holy magic. Charlotte can only argue that this is a game world where she is meant to succeed effortlessly, that game correction should automatically guide her along the right scenario. Rebecca counters that if this is a scenario, then Charlotte chose the most difficult route possible. She lays out the likely, near-impossible conditions for winning Garrett's route: maxing out affection, eliminating his fiancée, convincing the king, and achieving S-rank in all stats within a single year. Even if the world operates on game logic, winning Garrett's affection would have required immense effort. Furthermore, as the sole heir to her barony, it would have made far more sense for Charlotte to find a husband willing to marry into her family and inherit the title. Charlotte screams that effort is irrelevant. She argues that in games and in reality, people are loved simply for being cute. She demands to know why Rebecca is lecturing her. She rants that Rebecca has had everything: beauty, status, talent, and that no one can defy her, so a blessed genius like her could never understand Charlotte's feelings. Rebecca asks coldly if her own actions would be justified if she lacked the qualification to judge, or if being in a game world makes everything permissible. She challenges Charlotte, asking if she has ever imagined the blood, sweat, and tears required to earn the reputation of a genius, or the sacrifices made along the way. With tears in her eyes, Charlotte sees that Rebecca has no intention of showing her any mercy. Charlotte breaks down, crying that no one ever told her a heroine had to work hard to be loved, and it's unfair to be blamed for it now. She insists that everyone, except the villainous Rebecca, loved her for being cute. Rebecca refutes this, pointing out that Prince Garrett repeatedly tried to correct her bad manners, but she never listened, twisting his concern into harassment. Outside, a group of assassins notes that the mercenaries sent ahead have been wiped out, and that they will have to kill Rebecca themselves and frame the saint candidate. Rebecca looks at the crying Charlotte with something approaching pity, thinking that from a certain point of view, she really does look like a villainous bullying the heroine. But in reality, this is an operation to lure out the mastermind who has been using the naive heroine as a pawn. She resolves to fulfill her own role in this drama, telling Charlotte that she needs to face reality and think seriously about her future. Rebecca warns her not to underestimate the class system. As a mere baron's daughter, she would have inevitably been crushed by the rigid social hierarchy. Her agent Onyx adds that while social exile is the gentle option, there are countless ways, both mental and physical, to destroy a person who steps out of line. Rebecca then asks Charlotte with feigned innocence if she knows more about such things. Charlotte panics, blurting out that the assault ending was part of the game from the beginning and that it wasn't her fault. Rebecca's expression hardens as she tells Charlotte that's enough. She warns her that she is on a cliff's edge, and if she doesn't want to fall into darkness during her awakening, she needs to change her ways and start improving herself now. The second assassin enters the room. Charlotte, still under the influence of the serum, asks what falling into darkness means. Rebecca realizes with exasperation that Charlotte hasn't even been paying attention in her classes and tells her to check her magic control textbook when she gets back. Charlotte accuses her of lying and trying to trick her. Unseen by Charlotte, Rebecca is aware of a sinister presence, a mastermind who knows about the risk of falling and intends to use a corrupted saint candidate for their own evil deeds. Two assassins suddenly burst into the room. Charlotte is thrown aside as Rebecca's agents intercept the attackers. Peridot deftly blocks a blade meant for Rebecca. Amber casually remarks that the attacker is a curse user, but curses don't work on him since he's already given his entire soul to his mistress, Rebecca. He seems almost disgusted that they would try to use such a powerful curse on him, having simply reflected it back. Charlotte listens as Rebecca explains that curses destroy their target from the inside, but risk backfiring on the caster if they fail. She adds that fallen saint candidates are highly sought after as human sacrifices to power such curses, often targeting important people like royalty. The investigation, prompted by Onyx's initial report, had been escalated with her father's help. The results revealed that the merchant Charlotte was using to sell her gifts was also connected to a clan of curse users, a fact her father proudly notes as a fine accomplishment for her. Rebecca offers the credit for uncovering the criminal organization to her father to use as political leverage, asking only that he cover up Charlotte's involvement in return. Her one request is that Charlotte be given the chance to become a true saint. Her father questions her betting on such a slim possibility, but agrees, knowing that if Charlotte falls to darkness, they can simply eliminate her then. Rebecca reflects that as a mother in her past life, she feels a need to guide the younger girl. As a fellow reincarnator and an experienced elder, She believes she can provide the catalyst for Charlotte's redemption. One of the captured assassins curses their failure. Rebecca thinks that in this game, she may have been cast as the villainess, but for a heroine who has lost her way, she might also be the hidden savior. Onyx addresses the captured curse user, stating that they have underestimated the House of Howard. Rebecca tells Charlotte that since the incident will be covered up, she must maintain that her dealings with the merchant were legitimate. She then gives Charlotte a letter to take with her to the Alaya Temple. Peridot questions Rebecca's kindness, warning that people like Charlotte will only repay it with betrayal. Rebecca looks out the window, acknowledging that she does have something to thank Charlotte for. Because of her, Rebecca remembered her past life and the husband she loved. But at the same time, she resents Charlotte for it. She is not a kind or sweet person. She has offered Charlotte a path to salvation, but it is a path that also comes with a trial. She wants Charlotte to become a being who brings happiness to the kingdom, but she knows that given her current state, the path to her awakening as a saint will be an extremely difficult one. It will likely be so difficult that Charlotte will wish she had just fallen into darkness without knowing anything at all. A letter arrives for Rebecca, wishing her well and hoping she is spending her days in good health. The letter, from Prince Garrett, informs her that Charlotte departed the academy without any trouble and that he has sent Rebecca's brother David as a student council representative to escort her and report on the situation. The narrative title page for the 7th chapter is shown. Rebecca thinks to herself that Prince Garrett is surprisingly considerate in these matters, before wondering what her next move should be. Her agent, Onyx, suggests she should reply to the prince's many letters and flower deliveries, but she refuses, knowing they are sent out of obligation and that a reply will only encourage more unwanted gifts. She reaffirms her conviction that marrying anyone other than her husband from her past life is impossible, but the chances of him being reincarnated with a status compatible with hers are infinitesimally small. Therefore, she has resolved to remain single for life and now considers going directly to the Queen to demand her engagement be officially dissolved. She sighs, annoyed that they are dragging out the process and that her initial assumption of an easy breakup was naive, just as Onyx arrives with another armful of flowers. The room is now completely filled with bouquets, a clear sign of the royal family's persistent attempts to win her back. She considers her two possible future paths, living a quiet, independent life on her father's lands, or moving to the neighboring Siam kingdom to start her own business. She has already been managing a small business for years in a territory overseen by her father, developing and selling unique products with the local guilds. These products, like sparkling magic-infused beads and embroidered cushions, were born from her hobbies and became surprisingly popular as high-end gifts. She recalls how one of her cushions was jokingly nicknamed the Person Ruiner, because it was so comfortable it made people lazy, a strange compliment she still finds amusing. The thought of new business ventures fills her with a fiery passion, as she loves the thrill of being productive and creating something new. She has been constantly brainstorming ideas ever since the incident at the party was resolved. Onyx praises her ambitious plans and offers to help her petition the Queen directly, but just then, Amber rushes in with an invitation from the palace. The invitation is an informal letter from Queen Margarethe to Rebecca's mother, inviting her for tea at the Rose Pavilion to watch the moon. Rebecca immediately understands the coded message, as Moon Princess is her own unwelcome nickname, and realizes the invitation is for her. Her mother is overjoyed at the prospect of a royal tea party. Rebecca agrees to go and prepares to head to the palace. At the pavilion, the Queen dismisses her attendants for a private conversation, asking Rebecca to call her mother-in-law. Rebecca is taken aback by the familiar address, but the Queen insists, saying she still hopes for that outcome and asks if her wish might still come true. The Queen then apologizes profusely for her son Garrett's foolishness at the party, lamenting his immature pride. Rebecca politely defends the prince, claiming the fault was her own for failing to build a relationship of trust where he could confide in her about the saint candidate. The Queen waves off her defense, admitting that Garrett's immaturity caused the incident and has put the royal family deeply in the Howard family's debt. Rebecca takes the opportunity to make her case, explaining that the incident made her realize she cannot go through with a marriage to someone she doesn't love. The three women sit together, the atmosphere tense with unspoken thoughts. To Rebecca's utter shock, the Queen becomes ecstatic at this confession, interpreting it not as a desire for a single life, but a desire to find true love. The Queen enthusiastically declares that Rebecca is far too good for Garrett anyway. She forbids Rebecca from leaving the country, promising to find her a suitable partner from the many other fine young men in their extended family. She admits that while she would have respected Rebecca's wish to remain single, She is now thrilled at the prospect of finding her a man she can truly love. Rebecca is horrified, realizing she has completely misread the situation and has been caught in the Queen's well-intentioned but disastrous matchmaking scheme. She recalls how her mother and the Queen, old friends, were secretly delighted about her engagement to Garrett, their joy only tempered by her father's staunch opposition to a political match. She now understands that the Queen, having failed to secure Rebecca for her own son, is determined to fulfill her role as a matchmaker for her best friend's beloved daughter. As Rebecca struggles for a way to refuse, the Queen is already lost in her own excited planning. The Queen beams, announcing that she will host a grand ball after Rebecca's official debut into society, where she will introduce her to all the best candidates. Rebecca feels utterly trapped, unable to refuse the Queen's pure-hearted intentions without revealing the secret of her past-life husband. Furthermore, she cannot bear the thought of stubbornly refusing and disappointing her own mother. She politely thanks the Queen for the meal, noting with bitter irony that her engagement to Prince Garrett was officially and quietly dissolved that very same day. The scene shows the view from the palace window as she leaves. Lying in bed that night, Rebecca reflects that her only plan had been to annul her engagement and live a quiet single life, as she had no hope of finding her husband again. She considers that even with the memories of her past self, Saki, she is now Rebecca Howard, and perhaps she should let go and embrace a new life. But the memories of her husband are still vivid, and she recalls how he was plagued by realistic nightmares of war and demons. His dreams were always in full color and hyper-realistic, while hers were always more distant and observational. In her memories, he fought for his life in his sleep, and she dedicated herself to waking him and freeing him from his terrors. Her mind drifts back to their first meeting in their 3rd year of middle school. The first words he ever spoke to her were, "You will fall in love with me." As she lies in bed, the memory of those words startles her awake. She tries to dismiss it as a mere coincidence and tells herself to go back to sleep. That night, she has a powerful dream of her past life. She dreams of meeting him again in high school and how they started dating after reconnecting at a reunion. Though they attended different universities, they spent every possible moment together. After they both struggled through a tough job market and secured employment, he proposed, asking her to marry him upon graduation. She remembers them discussing their future, and him asking if she had any non-negotiable terms for their marriage. With a smile, she had declared that cheating was an absolute deal-breaker, promising immediate divorce with no excuses. She then asked him why he had said such a strange thing on the day they first met, and he confessed it was because he had fallen for her at first sight. He promised he would prove his faithfulness to her over the next 50 years. The dream then shifts to the accident that took her life at the age of 43. Her last memory is of her husband, Shu, desperately calling her name, Saki. She never knew if he survived. Her eyes are shown in close-up, filled with unshed tears. She awakens feeling horrible, wondering why, on the very day her debut into high society was decided, she would have a dream that so vividly reminded her of what she lost. She looks at the moon and remembers teasing her husband about the famous literary confession, "The moon is beautiful." She recalls explaining the story of how Natsume Soseki translated, "I love you," that way, and how he just looked confused. The memory of his voice calling her name, Saki, echoes in her mind. Then comes the memory of him years later, finally telling her, "The moon is beautiful," his own quiet confession of love. The memories overwhelm her, and her heart aches with the desperate longing to see him again, wondering if it's possible he too was reincarnated in this world. She knows she cannot back out of her debut. It is her duty to her family and to the Queen. She decides to attend the ball, make a good impression, and then firmly declare her intention to remain single. As her mother helps her get ready, a small spark of hope ignites within her at the faint possibility that he might be there. Her mother compliments her beauty, carefully applying her makeup so she will look her absolute best for her official debut into high society at the royal palace. Rebecca's mother is giddy with excitement about the upcoming ball, while Rebecca tries in vain to explain that she has no interest in finding a husband. Though she dreads her social debut, she finds some comfort in the fact that she will be able to see her friends again. Her mother gently questions her decision, asking why she is in such a hurry to declare a life of solitude before she has even entered society. With tears in her eyes, her mother tells her that it is not like her to run away from life and give up on finding love without even trying. Rebecca concedes the point, realizing that her sudden declaration of celibacy is a jarring reversal from her previous pragmatic acceptance of a political marriage. She understands her mother's concern, For a noblewoman to remain single without entering a convent is highly unusual, and her mother is simply worried for her daughter's future. As a mother herself in her past life, she can fully empathize with her own mother's anxieties. Finally, she relents, agreeing to attend the ball and meet many suitors if only to prove that her resolve to remain single will not waver. In the carriage on the way to the palace, her mother explains that the queen has already arranged her dance partners, whose names are written on the back of her fan. Her mother expresses her relief, telling Rebecca that she is not a weak or foolish girl and that facing this challenge is better than running from it. She wisely adds that if, after giving it a fair chance, Rebecca still wishes to refuse marriage, it can be framed as a strategic retreat rather than a failure. Rebecca steels her resolve, viewing the glittering palace not as a place for romance, but as a grand stage upon which she will prove her unwavering commitment to a single life. Upon arriving, she is warmly greeted by her friends, including Samantha, who was worried after receiving Rebecca's letter about the annulment. Rebecca reassures her friend, admitting that she was far more indifferent to the prince's actions than anyone else was. Samantha is simply glad to see that Rebecca is genuinely happy and untroubled by the whole affair. Rebecca, already looking to the future, asks about Evan and Brandon, having heard they were severely reprimanded by their fathers for their conduct at the party. Her friends recount how their fiancés were harshly disciplined, with Evan now sending a constant barrage of flowers and gifts to make amends. Rebecca finds the idea of being bombarded with gifts unromantic, though she acknowledges others might find it charming. As a courtier announces it is time for her audience with the king, she realizes her ceremonial bouquet is missing and briefly wonders if Prince Garrett might make a dramatic appearance with it. She enters the throne room to make her official debut, curtsying before the king and the assembled court. As she performs the perfectly rehearsed greeting, she is struck by a profound respect for the king and queen, not just as monarchs, but as his parents. She cannot help but wonder if he is here at the palace tonight. The king presents her with a single white rose, officially welcoming her to society. Her mother explains that the white rose also serves as her invitation to the ball. Rebecca glances at her fan, the dance card, and her mother playfully asks whose names the queen has chosen for her. In elegant script, a single line is written, "The royal man who yearns for you." Rebecca stares at the words, utterly stunned. Her mother, however, is delighted, exclaiming how wonderfully passionate her secret suitor must be. Her mother tells her not to worry and to simply wait for the mystery man to claim his dance at the ball. The phrase, "You will fall in love with me," echoes in her mind, a phrase she has now heard from 2 different royal brothers, and she tries to dismiss it as an impossible coincidence. Yet, despite her resolve, a part of her is desperate to meet this man, just to see for herself. Her friend Samantha notices her flustered expression and asks if something is wrong. At that moment, Crown Prince Ethan, the Sun Prince, enters the hall, drawing the admiration of all the ladies present. He walks directly towards her, his eyes fixed on hers, and she tells herself that even if he is the one, a relationship between them is impossible. The reason is simple and insurmountable. The Crown Prince, Ethan, is already married. The final page shows an illustration of the repelling Berchan self-defense devices. The words that open the chapter are, "The royal man who yearns for you." Evan finds his fiancée Samantha, asking her to come with him to meet a friend. Rebecca bids Samantha farewell, and they agree to meet later. A small, central panel shows Rebecca bowing her head in thought. She reflects that it has been 3 years since she last saw Crown Prince Ethan, when her engagement to Garrett was first formed. She hadn't planned to dance with anyone tonight, but a corner of her heart had hoped to see him, as his words from their first meeting felt like more than a coincidence. Her heart pounds as he approaches. He asks her to raise her head. He smiles, remarking that she hasn't changed, then corrects himself, saying she has grown even more beautiful than she was 3 years ago. Rebecca is internally wary, noting how smoothly such compliments come to him, and decides to test him with a bit of passive aggression. She deflects his compliment, saying his own fiancée, Princess Aaliyah, is far more beautiful, and sarcastically asks if this teasing is part of her hazing for her social debut. She thinks that if he is truly him, he will understand her hidden message. She's not interested in a man who already has a fiancé. She curtsies, turning to leave. The ball continues around them. Rebecca is racked with conflicting emotions, hoping desperately that he is her shoe, but also praying that he is not. Her mother is shocked, whispering that Rebecca's dance partner is Prince Ethan himself. Ethan declares that since he is the royal man written on her fan, she cannot run away, and he has no intention of letting her go or sharing her with anyone. Tears well in Rebecca's eyes as memories of her past life flood back. She knows without a doubt that this man is her husband reincarnated. She wonders how the queen knew and how much Ethan himself remembers. The other guests watch them, whispering about the beautiful dance of the Sun Prince and the Moon Princess. Rebecca notices her mother's stern expression and wonders if she was unaware of the queen's matchmaking. She knows that some ladies are drawn to the crown prince, content with being a beloved mistress without the heavy responsibilities of a queen, but she could never accept that. They finish their dance. He quietly tells her that he has no intention of dancing a second time and making a scene like the one with Charlotte, nor does he plan to dance with any other lady. Her mother approaches, asking a lady-in-waiting to escort Rebecca to the terrace for 10 minutes, while she goes to greet the queen. Rebecca thanks her and leaves with the prince. They stand on the terrace. She tries to sort through her thoughts, understanding that her past life as Saki and her current life as Rebecca are separate. But even so, both lives are her, and her heart cannot so easily accept what her mind understands. He asks her what she is thinking, bringing her back to the present. He asks for her impression of him now, compared to when they first met, and he told her she would fall in love with him. She feels her composure slipping. She tells him her first impression was that he was a strange person. A split image shows her smiling in the present and in her past life, the memory and reality blending. He speaks her past life name, Saki. She had planned to just confirm his identity from afar and then retreat to her lands to live a single life, unable to bear seeing him with another woman, the princess from a neighboring country he is engaged to. He looks out at the moonlit sky and says, "The moon is beautiful, isn't it?" She knows this is not a comment on the weather but a coded confession of love, the one her husband once made to her, and she replies with the traditional response, "I could die happy." The scene shifts to a flashback of her brother, David, arriving at the temple with Charlotte. The priests at the temple have heard rumors about the new saint candidate's beauty and unique holy power. One of the priests, Keith, seems particularly interested. Charlotte enters the temple, greeted by a line of priests. One of them immediately sneers, wondering why that woman is here. Undeterred, Charlotte gives her standard cheerful and polite introduction to the assembled priests. A young man thinks it's unbelievable that the gloomy girl tried to condemn Rebecca Howard, the powerful Moon Princess. Another man, Keith, tells his friend to stop panicking and warns him not to get any ideas about the cute saint candidate, Charlotte. Keith thinks his friend is an annoying romantic, having known about this otome game world from a promotional video he once watched for free. He remembers his initial shock at being reincarnated into a game for girls but figures it makes sense if she is the protagonist. He decides to wait and see how things play out. He watches as Charlotte is immediately surrounded by other admiring priests. A maid informs Charlotte that her previous maid is gone and that she should start her new life with a fresh perspective. Charlotte reflects on her failed attack on Rebecca, the strange outcome of which was that they are now corresponding by letter, with Rebecca's brother David acting as a courier. She feels that coming to the Alaya temple is a complete reset of her social life. A priestess named Clarissa welcomes Charlotte to the temple and offers her assistance. Weeks ago, after her failed attack on Rebecca, she had woken up back in her room at the academy. She has a hazy memory of someone sending her back, but the details are unclear. However, she vividly remembers Rebecca acknowledging that this is an otome game world and telling her that she needs to put in the effort to win the world's affection. She had wondered what kind of effort was needed, like looking in the mirror to raise her appearance stat or studying to raise her academic stat. She felt she had already put in plenty of effort by dressing up and trying to raise the affection of the male capture targets. She worried that if the game's ending had already passed, she wouldn't know what to do next, especially with Rebecca's warning about not all saint candidates successfully awakening. She finds the magic control textbook in the library. Reading it, she is horrified to learn that a failed awakening can invert her holy power into a disastrous curse. She tries to dismiss it as an exaggeration, believing that her status as the protagonist guarantees she will become a saint. But she recalls that her condemnation event also failed, and that Rebecca's warnings might have been genuine attempts to help her. Just then, a maid arrives with flowers, a cushion, and a letter from Rebecca Howard. Charlotte is bewildered, wondering if the villainess really wants to be her pen pal. She decides that she can't just rely on the game system, and that she needs to put in some effort herself. She begins by practicing her control of light magic. Her maid, Millie, brings her tea, surprised and pleased that Charlotte is studying so hard for the first time. Charlotte tells Millie that she won't be able to come with her to the temple, but Millie informs her that she is getting married. Charlotte is shocked and asks for all the details, learning that Millie was proposed to by a man who claims to be the reincarnation of her beloved dog from a past life. She realizes Millie has always been a kind and supportive person, and she regrets how she treated her over the past year, sincerely congratulating her on her marriage. Millie encourages her to do her best in her new life, and Charlotte, inspired, writes her first reply to Rebecca, finally understanding what effort might mean. The letter is exchanged between servants in front of the Howard mansion. Prince Garrett reads the letter and asks David for his impression of Charlotte's new life at the temple. David reports that she seems to be simply enjoying her new environment and doesn't seem smart enough to be acting, though he worries she might cause trouble in the male-dominated temple. Garrett instructs David to continue monitoring the saint candidate, then dismisses him to have a private conversation with Rebecca's father. After David leaves, Rebecca's father asks if he understands the situation. He confirms that the girl hired thugs and a curse user to harm Rebecca, a plot that was far more sinister than he had imagined. He reveals there is a more important matter than the curse plot: what happened with the man who danced with Rebecca at her debut ball. Rebecca thinks her father is being nosy, especially since her past life husband, Ethan, publicly declared his claim on her despite being engaged to another woman. The scandal is now the talk of high society, with some seeing it as a fateful romance and others as a disgraceful affair. But her own feelings are what matter most. She has no intention of engaging in a two-timing relationship and tells her father she is focused on her work in the Clay Viscounty, not romance. Her father is pleased with her anger, saying it's only right, and promises to listen to her vent about it later. A letter is shown on a desk. Her father changes the subject, turning to the matter of the saint candidate, Charlotte Silva. He states bluntly that the curse users are planning to make Charlotte fall to darkness. He explains that Charlotte was manipulated by the curse users, who used her ignorance to trick her into hiring the assassins, intending for her to fall into despair and become a powerful human sacrifice for their curses. The mastermind is a Viscount Zongo, who is suspected of treason against the royal family and whose lineage has secretly produced curse users for generations. And the ultimate target of this plot is not Rebecca, but Crown Prince Ethan's fiancée, Princess Aaliyah, as part of a succession dispute in the neighboring kingdom. Rebecca realizes with a shock that someone is trying to murder her Shu's fiancé by using Charlotte. Her father states that since their kingdom is stable without a saint, it would be safer to eliminate Charlotte now to remove the risk of her falling to darkness. He declares that the girl is dangerous and must be killed. The scene shows the backs of Garrett, Rebecca, and Charlotte. Rebecca tells her father to wait, stating that no harm is to come to the saint candidate unless it becomes absolutely necessary. The flashback shows a demon attacking a warrior. Rebecca thinks that there must be something she can do, that Ethan wouldn't have done nothing. She wishes she could consult with her Shu about what to do. In the flashback, a younger Ethan stops his companion from pursuing a fleeing monster. He argues that the monster preys on other harmful creatures, and as long as they maintain a balance, there is no need to exterminate it. He posits that the world's creator must have had a reason for creating monsters, and that coexistence is possible through mutual non-interference. His companions agree with his reasoning. The scene shows a caravan being escorted by knights. Ethan's cousin, Lewis, is being praised by Ethan, who calls him the top candidate for the next leader of the First Magic Division. Lewis is embarrassed by the praise. Ethan reveals he has met the world's creator, back when he was Shu, before his reincarnation. An envoy arrives at the First Magic Division's headquarters, ordering Ethan to return to the capital immediately. His uncle, the current division leader, gives him the order from the king, adding that there is to be a family dinner to discuss the matter of Rebecca Howard. Garrett panics, terrified of having dinner with his brother after Ethan publicly claimed his fiancée, knowing he is in for a severe lecture. The chapter begins with a title page featuring Rebecca and the two princes, Ethan and Garrett. In the Howard family's capital townhouse, Marquis Howard sits at the head of the dinner table and sternly demands that his daughter Rebecca recount everything that occurred at the Queen's ball. David speculates that the fan, bearing the inscription, "A man of the royal family who yearns for you," must hold a secret meaning, but Rebecca dismisses it, suggesting the prince is simply a flirt. The Marquis explains that while Prince Ethan is engaged to Princess Aaliyah from a neighboring kingdom, their relationship is more akin to that of comrades in arms, as they exchange political treatises instead of love letters. A surprised Rebecca asks her father how he knows such intimate details about the royal couple's relationship, to which he replies that such things are easily investigated. Her mother, the Marchioness, is horrified, scolding her husband for committing an act that borders on treason by prying into the private letters of royalty, telling him his doting has gone too far. He counters that if the prince had made a move on Rebecca while in a genuinely loving relationship, he would have taught him a harsh lesson, but Rebecca insists that this is her problem to handle, not theirs. The Marquis then reveals the most troubling part of the affair. The fan was not given by Prince Ethan, but by the Queen herself, a revelation that makes him feel profoundly betrayed by the royal family he has served so faithfully. David offers to excuse himself from the heavy conversation, but his mother insists that he stay, as it is an important family matter. The Marchioness explains that she had been a confidant to Queen Margarethe for years, listening to her worries about the persistent rumors that Prince Ethan was not interested in women, and was relieved when he finally agreed to the political engagement with Princess Aaliyah. She expresses her deep sense of betrayal, lamenting that the Queen, whom she considered a dear friend, would try to make Rebecca her son's mistress, especially right after her engagement to Garrett was broken. Her husband comforts her as she begins to cry, admitting he feels helpless when he sees her tears and noting that their family has always been one ruled by romance and matters of the heart. Rebecca reflects on her own pragmatic view of the nobility as servants to the crown, for whom political marriages are a natural and expected duty in exchange for their land and titles. This view was often complicated by her own parents, who were deeply in love and remained so even after having 2 children, a stark contrast to her own sense of duty. Watching her parents, who fell in love at first sight, often made Rebecca wonder if her own complete lack of romantic interest in anyone made her abnormal. Yet despite her lifelong indifference, her entire world was turned upside down on the night of her debutante ball when she was reunited with Prince Ethan. During their dance, he commented on the beauty of the moon, a classic poetic confession, and she replied that the moon must surely wish to be captured by him. Their exchange made them the center of attention for the entire evening, with every word and gesture scrutinized by the entire court. They continued their conversation using coded language, with Rebecca revealing that she only remembered her past life's love for him the day before their graduation, a realization that filled her with regret for having overlooked him for so long. Intrigued, Ethan asks her what it was that triggered the return of her memories. She explains that a junior at her academy, the Saint candidate Charlotte, was also a reincarnated person, and her murmurings about an upcoming condemnation event jogged her memory. Internally, Rebecca hopes that Ethan, or Shuchan, doesn't know the full details of Charlotte's subsequent attack on her, as she genuinely wants to save the girl and help her become a true saint. Ethan smiles warmly at her explanation, remarking that he owes this young lady his gratitude for helping her remember him. Rebecca describes Charlotte as a cute but peculiar girl, vaguely alluding to the trouble on graduation day that led to Rebecca breaking her engagement with Prince Garrett. Through their carefully worded conversation, Rebecca came to understand that Ethan had retained his memories from birth and had been searching for her ever since. On the night of the ball, they were only permitted 10 minutes alone together on the balcony. The coded nature of their speech made it impossible to share many details in such a short time, but despite the brevity of their meeting, Rebecca's heart was soaring. She finally understood that her lifelong lack of interest in romance was because her soul, too, had been searching for Shuchan since the moment she was reborn into this world. After their brief reunion on the balcony, Rebecca formally takes her leave from the prince. Finishing her story, Rebecca explains to her parents that Prince Ethan had personally asked the Queen to arrange for him to be her escort, her mind affirming that their love for each other remains unchanged despite the circumstances. She clarifies that Ethan had the Queen present the fan without his name because he knew the Howard family would undoubtedly interfere if they knew his intentions beforehand. With her explanation complete, Rebecca firmly states that she has no intention of accepting the prince's feelings under the current circumstances and asks her family not to escalate the issue. Her parents exchange a tense, silent glance, absorbing their daughter's decision and the complexities of the situation. Rebecca wishes to move the conversation toward the threat of the curse masters, but her father remains fixated on the prince's audacity, while at the same time, a similar drama unfolds at the royal dinner table. The kingdom of Render is led by 2 princes, the Crown Prince Ethan and his younger brother, Garrett. Ethan had always been proud of his academically gifted younger brother, but Garrett's disastrous conduct at the graduation ball has filled him with an anger he can barely suppress. However, the king's fury is directed not at Garrett, but at his eldest son and heir, Ethan. The king icily grants his son a chance to explain why he chose to publicly humiliate both the royal house and the Howard family at the Queen's ball. Ethan braces himself, knowing he must answer for his very public declaration of affection. He concedes that his father's anger is justified, acknowledging his duty as Prince Ethan of Render comes before his personal identity as Shu. He knows that any attempt to explain his past life would be met with incomprehension from his father. Therefore, he decides to state his intentions plainly, declaring that his actions were motivated by his love for Lady Rebecca Howard. He confesses that he has known she was his destiny since the moment he first saw her 3 years prior, when Garrett introduced her as his fiancée. He then reveals a second, crucial piece of information to justify his behavior. His engagement to Princess Aaliyah, he explains, is not a true betrothal but a temporary contract set to last only 4 years. The king is stunned by this revelation, stating that this is the first he has heard of such an arrangement. He turns to the queen, who admits she knew, confessing that Ethan had confided in her before the ball and that she had helped him arrange the meeting with Rebecca. Ethan elaborates that Princess Aaliyah proposed the fake engagement herself, seeking his protection while she gathers evidence to take revenge on a powerful political enemy. The king immediately connects this to the rumored curse assassination of Aaliyah's mother, the queen of the Siam kingdom, who was said to have died in her daughter's place. Ethan confirms in confidence that the king's suspicions are correct and that the perpetrator was Viscount Zongo. The purpose of the fake engagement is to lull Aaliyah's enemies into a false sense of security, making them believe she has no claim to the throne, buying her 4 years to act before her younger sister comes of age. While the king accepts the political necessity of the fake engagement, he declares that it is a separate issue from Ethan's pursuit of Rebecca. He furiously points out that Ethan is trying to take his own brother's fiancée, arguing that it is only Garrett's disastrous breakup with Charlotte Silva that even made Rebecca available. The king commands Ethan to sort out his affairs, reminding him that a royal marriage is a matter of state, not personal desire, and that a union with Rebecca is impossible without the full consent of the Howard family. The queen rushes to her son's defense, overjoyed that he has finally shown romantic interest in a woman and declaring that she will support his quest for love. Ethan internally admits his father is right. He allowed his past life memories to cloud his judgment, making him neglect his present duties and assume Rebecca would remember him, a costly miscalculation. Yet, despite the consequences and his own foolishness, his love for Rebecca remains unwavering. Garrett then speaks, offering his support for his brother's fated love, citing how much Ethan has taught him about being a royal and a man. He reveals he is already in contact with Rebecca, helping her commercialize magically preserved flowers, and is even hosting a research event for her, pledging to help his brother's romance succeed. In a stunning turn, Ethan grabs his younger brother's hands and firmly tells him that he must be the one to inherit the throne. Garrett is completely flabbergasted by the proposal, his eyes swirling with confusion as he asks his brother if he is joking. Ethan simply offers a confident, knowing smile in response to his brother's shock. The chapter concludes with a montage showing Charlotte reading a letter, Rebecca and David with the preserved flowers, and a maid looking on from the background. Charlotte reads a letter addressed to her from Rebecca, which opens by acknowledging the rumors about the sun and moon and reassuring her not to worry. Confused by the sun and moon poetry, Charlotte dismisses it as the strange talk of high nobles and continues reading the letter, which invites her as a friend to a preserved flower exhibition and tea party hosted by Rebecca. Charlotte feels a bit pleased at being called a friend and decides she will grace the event with her presence, but not without stipulating a condition first. The letter's condition is that she must obtain an exit permit from her stern attendant, Clarissa, which makes Charlotte cry out in frustration over how strict the woman is, an outburst that Clarissa herself overhears. She reflects that her instructor, Clarissa, is a viscount's daughter skilled in magic control, and realizes her assignment to such a high-ranking mentor signifies the temple's high hopes for her awakening as a saint and also serves as a nod to her connection with the royal family. Nevertheless, Charlotte finds Clarissa's constant meddling in her personal life, right down to scolding her for not wearing socks and shoes, to be incredibly annoying. When Charlotte questions the rule against being barefoot, arguing it's uncomfortable to wear shoes constantly, Clarissa sharply retorts that it is improper for a lady of her station and is simply a matter of proper etiquette. Charlotte muses that Clarissa is a good person aside from her nagging, but as she is the newcomer and Clarissa her superior, she resolves to endure it for now and simply be more discreet in the future. Because she understands that magic control is a life-or-death skill, she focuses intensely on her training, managing to maintain it for 30 minutes, which earns her praise from Clarissa for her hard work. Clarissa explains that her strictness is for Charlotte's own good, as self-discipline is crucial for someone who holds the potential for both sainthood and demonic corruption. Charlotte directly asks Clarissa if she is aware of her poor reputation and the rumors that followed her from Lemra's academy, a fact Clarissa readily confirms. However, Clarissa encourages her by stating that her past is irrelevant and that everything now depends on her future actions. This acknowledgement of her efforts makes Charlotte believe that she and Clarissa are finally beginning to build a good relationship. This hope is immediately dashed when Clarissa forbids her from casually socializing with the male priests, and when Charlotte protests that she only wants to be friendly, Clarissa insists that becoming friends is not necessary. Charlotte tries to justify her actions by explaining Rebecca's advice to charm the world as the story's protagonist, a concept that leaves Clarissa utterly bewildered. She continues, stating her desire to make everyone smile, including Clarissa, and thought that simply talking to people was the best way to start. Clarissa dismisses her reasoning, saying she is just like the others at Lemra's academy, implying she causes trouble with her looks, which provokes Charlotte into asking if she thinks everyone will fight over her just because she's cute. Clarissa clarifies that her concern is not jealousy but the very real danger of Charlotte's magic inverting if her emotions become unstable, questioning if she wants to be a recluse unable to interact with anyone. When Clarissa insists she must control her feelings, Charlotte argues that she can, citing the praise she just received, but Clarissa bluntly refutes this, stating that even at this moment, she is demonstrating a complete lack of control. As Clarissa turns and walks away, Charlotte follows, demanding that she stop and finish their conversation. Dejected, Charlotte complains about her situation when a young man approaches, asking if the saint candidate is all right. He gently tells her that her sad expression is ruining her lovely face. The young apprentice priest introduces himself as Keith, admitting he has been watching her since her arrival because he finds her refreshingly unlike other nobles and feels a strange sense of familiarity. Flustered by Clarissa's earlier warning, Charlotte tries to maintain her distance, but she too feels as though she has met Keith somewhere before. Keith explains that his own mother was extremely strict about manners, so he offers to help her, an offer she happily accepts. They agree to meet secretly when Clarissa is away. After looking around cautiously to ensure they are alone, Charlotte ushers Keith into her room. Inside, she is astonished to see that Keith has conjured an entire set of tableware from ice for their lesson. When she asks about his powerful magic, he reveals he is from a high-ranking noble family but was disowned by his father after his mother's death. He tells her that being able to use his difficult upbringing to help her makes him feel it wasn't all for nothing. He remarks that when one god abandons you, another is there to pick you up, prompting Charlotte to feel a swell of gratitude. Keith insists that her smile is all the thanks he needs and reminds her to keep their lessons a secret, which inspires a new sense of determination in Charlotte. Later, Charlotte pens her reply to Rebecca, thanking her for the invitation, which Rebecca finds amusingly formal. As Rebecca reads the letter to David, she explains that Charlotte is studying manners with a male apprentice priest to prepare for the party. The letter concludes with Charlotte giddily confessing that she thinks she is developing a crush on her handsome teacher, a revelation that leaves Rebecca speechless. David observes his sister's shocked expression and notes that she looks unwell. Rebecca confides in David that while she would normally support a friend's romantic pursuits, she is worried about this development, leading David to wonder if Charlotte is blackmailing her again. Deciding to change the subject, Rebecca claims she is simply tired from working all day and plans to go inspect the territory. She spontaneously invites David to join her, causing the young man to blush profusely. David quickly recovers and strategically advises her to wear a dress, noting that the people of their territory have a strong preference for seeing her dressed elegantly. Thanking him for the advice, Rebecca goes to prepare, privately wondering why everyone makes such a fuss about her wearing a dress and lamenting how Charlotte has once again misinterpreted her words. She considers sending her shadow agents to the temple for surveillance but dismisses the idea as something a true villainess would do. Later, Rebecca and David arrive in the southern part of the Clay Viscount's territory and exchange pleasantries with the locals. She inquires about the state of their business, and a townsman happily reports that operations are proceeding exceptionally well. As she discusses new flower-based products, Rebecca reflects on the difficult journey it took to achieve this success. When her father first put her in charge of the territory, she advised the locals on how to establish 3 flower shops selling high-priced preserved flowers that never wilt. The 3 shops specialized in different styles: Gifty for chic arrangements, Rose for bouquets of wild roses, and Gardens for unique and unusual plants. She recalls achieving all of this at the age of 16, before she had even regained the memories of her previous life. A flashback shows a time when a poor harvest devastated the region, leaving the people with no food or money, begging her for aid. At the time, Rebecca found the situation illogical, reasoning that a crop shortage should have driven up market prices, thereby balancing the farmer's income. She immediately instructed her aide, Onyx, to fetch a list of current crop prices from the capital to investigate the discrepancy. Upon reviewing the contracts between the farmers and merchants, she uncovered a simple yet critical error. The farmers were paid a fixed rate per volume, not a percentage of the fluctuating market price. Rebecca assembled the merchants and farmers to address the exploitative contracts. The farmers had never noticed the unfair terms because the territory's stable climate and fertile land had always produced bountiful harvests, giving them no reason to scrutinize the details, a complacency the merchants had exploited. In the present, Rebecca recalls how she successfully renegotiated the contracts directly between the Howard family and the merchants on behalf of the farmers. A flashback shows her presenting the newly drafted contracts to the farmers for their review and signature. The farmers sheepishly confessed that they were illiterate, with the exception of the elderly Viscount Clay and a scholar's son whom they had ostracized for being bookish and unsuited for farm work. Upon hearing this, Rebecca immediately asked them to summon the ostracized young man. One of her advisors had callously remarked that it was only natural for the stupid and illiterate farmers to be tricked by shrewd merchants. Rebecca firmly rejected this sentiment, stating that as the acting lord, it was her duty to ensure her people would never be deceived again. She knew that simply driving away the corrupt merchants was a temporary solution and that true security for her people lay in education, giving them the means to protect themselves and expand their opportunities. She turned to Viscount Clay and asked him to become a teacher for the town, hailing him as their hope, to which the embarrassed Viscount humbly agreed. Concurrently with promoting education, Rebecca focused on vitalizing the local economy, knowing that new skills require new opportunities, which led to her establishing the 3 flower shops. Back in the present, a florist mentions that the flower arrangement Rebecca recognized was part of a standing weekly order from Prince Ethan to the Howard estate. Rebecca is stunned by this news, realizing with a shock that the flowers she had been receiving all this time were not from Prince Garrett. The florists clarify that Prince Ethan began placing daily orders for flowers as soon as Rebecca moved to the Clay territory. They add that he generously spreads his business across all 3 shops and forgoes Sunday deliveries so they can rest with their families. One of the florists asks if she hadn't noticed the card bearing the initial I that accompanied every delivery, but Rebecca has no recollection of seeing such a thing. Her eyes dart to her brother, David, a silent accusation hanging between them. A flashback reveals Rebecca using the daily flower deliveries as materials for product development, lamenting that had she known they were gifts from Shuchan, she would have preserved at least one. In the present, a small child from the town offers Rebecca a drawing to cheer her up, and she thanks the girl warmly. David watches his sister's easy interaction with the townspeople, a flicker of concern on his face. He recalls his butler's words about the dangers of having social barriers that are too low, wondering why his sister is so casual with commoners. His thoughts then burst forth in a jealous exclamation, "Why are the townspeople closer to you than I am?" Rebecca is left completely baffled by her adolescent brother's mysterious and sudden outburst of anger. Shaking off her confusion, she decides to write an invitation to Prince Ethan for the exhibition, intending to include an apology for ignoring his gifts, which prompts a pouting David to ask where his invitation is. The chapter ends on a chibi drawing of David, glaring with jealousy. The chapter opens with a stylized image of a blonde man holding a sword, poised for action. An official reports that while the magical beast population is stable, some merchants are hiring mercenaries to illegally hunt rare creatures for their parts. He is ordered to investigate the beast's impact on local populations to assess the situation. An attendant delivers a letter to Prince Ethan, announcing it is from Lady Rebecca Howard, who thanks him for the lovely flowers he sends each day. In the letter, she apologizes for not visiting in person, citing the need for discretion now that their relationship is under intense scrutiny, which delights Ethan, who immediately summons his cousin and trusted aide, Louis Stanley. Ethan, Louis, and another aide read the rest of the letter, where Rebecca reveals her upcoming flower exhibition will be attended by Render's most influential merchants, including the very mastermind who manipulated Charlotte into attacking her. She exposes their plot, to corrupt a saint into a human pillar for a powerful curse, which they intend to use to assassinate Ethan's fiancée, Princess Aaliyah. Louis, his voice filled with disbelief, asks if the contents of the letter could possibly be true. Ethan confirms that the unnatural lack of evidence from his own investigation supports her claim and that he now understands her vow of celibacy was a strategic move to protect everyone, though Lewis still struggles to accept the necessity of such a drastic measure. Ethan laments that Rebecca, who has regained her past memories, is unaware that his engagement is a temporary sham, believing she is acting out of a deep sense of grief and anger that he desperately wishes he could assuage. Unable to explain the complexities of reincarnation to his companions, Ethan creates a simplified narrative. Rebecca broke her engagement to Garrett after the incident at Charlotte's graduation to protect both the Howard and royal families. He grimly speculates that to maintain her distance and protect her family, Rebecca will either move her business abroad or retreat from society entirely by joining a convent. The thought of Rebecca becoming permanently out of reach fills him with a sense of panic and urgency. He acknowledges that blaming his brother for this complicated situation would be unfair and misplaced. The letter concludes with Rebecca's calculated move. She has knowingly invited the vulnerable Charlotte to her exhibition, trusting Ethan to understand her unspoken message, which he does, immediately gathering his inner circle to formulate a plan. A woman, presumably an aide to Princess Aaliyah, looks at herself in a mirror, dressed in an elaborate gown, and questions if this disguise is truly part of their strategy. Lewis complains about the absurdity of the situation, stating that he has no idea why he is being forced to try on clothes intended for Rebecca, to which Ethan casually replies that their builds are similar. Ethan admits that while he must keep his distance from Rebecca until their relationship is accepted, he is suffering from severe Rebecca withdrawal and dismisses Lewis's suggestion to give the gift to Princess Aaliyah instead, as he feels sunflowers suit Rebecca perfectly. When Lewis questions Ethan's brown hair, the prince explains it is a disguise to avoid being recognized, as their natural blonde and silver hair are too conspicuous, and orders Lewis to dye his hair as well. The multifaceted goals of their impending mission are laid bare. They must protect Rebecca from her suitors, shield Charlotte from the Curse Masters, and ultimately save Princess Aaliyah's life. Ethan declares their intent to infiltrate the exhibition, while Garrett, having received a formal invitation, will act as their man on the inside, with Ethan expressing his trust in his younger brother to succeed. Elsewhere, Garrett holds a skull, his expression hardening as he resolves not to give up. In a shadowy chamber, Viscount Zongo, the mastermind, holds the same skull before a kneeling Curse Master. Zongo quizzes his subordinate, the head Curse Master, demanding to know what he senses from the skull. The nervous Curse Master stammers that he can feel an immense and powerful magic emanating from the bone. Zongo reveals that the skull belonged to one of the Curse Master's most promising students, who died when a curse was reflected back upon him, and that he has since repurposed the student's remains into a powerful medium for their dark arts. Horrified, the Curse Master asks the Viscount if he feels no remorse for turning one of his own clansmen into a cursed tool. Zongo coldly replies that great targets require great resolve and reminds him of their first failure to assassinate Princess Aaliyah, declaring that the Zongo clan cannot afford to fail a third time. He issues a chilling order to use any means necessary to torment, defile, and corrupt Charlotte into a being of darkness. His ultimate plan is to use the corrupted saint as a material to forge the eye of a fallen saint, a cursed artifact powerful enough to destroy any foe and restore the Zongo clan to its former glory in the Siam royal court. The Viscount's final command to his subordinate is to probe the Aliana temple and find a weakness to exploit. The chapter flashes back to several days prior, taking place in Prince Ethan's private chambers. Ethan sits alone in his vast book-lined study, a heavy expression on his face. He reflects on the carefree attitude of those around him, who remain oblivious to the critical danger they are all in. When his younger brother Garrett enters, Ethan muses that Garrett isn't truly as incompetent as he appears, wondering if he is deliberately playing the role of a harmless, ditzy prince. Garrett enthusiastically presents a new flavor of Rebecca's favorite cookies, planning to give them to her at the exhibition to win her affection, a gesture Ethan recognizes as completely missing the point. Garrett then proposes a seemingly brilliant idea. They should arrange a meeting between Rebecca and Princess Aaliyah. He argues that since both women have strong personalities, they might become fast friends, which would in turn alleviate Ethan's burdens. Another aide notes the plan's feasibility, as Princess Aaliyah is currently residing in a nearby villa to study their kingdom's culture, prompting Garrett to suggest they'll need a gift for her as well. Ethan erupts in anger, calling his brother a fool for failing to see that such a meeting would present Viscount Zongo with the perfect opportunity to assassinate the princess on their soil. He feels trapped in an impossible dilemma. Protecting Rebecca would risk an international incident, while protecting Princess Aaliyah would mean losing Rebecca forever. The mere thought of a future without Rebecca fills him with a primal terror, as if it were his own death he was contemplating. Garrett apologizes for his thoughtless suggestion, and Ethan, calming himself, acknowledges his brother's good intentions but asks for a moment alone. Once by himself, Ethan delves into his memories, acknowledging that the intense depth of his feelings for Rebecca stems from his previous life and his love for his wife, Saki. His thoughts drift to his first meeting with Saki, the soul who has now been reborn as Rebecca. He recalls being a high school student and already knowing who she was from his visions, impulsively telling her that she was destined to fall in love with him. The memory of his own cringeworthy abruptness makes him flinch. He remembers how she simply laughed and called him strange, a moment so precious that he still considers it a miracle they ever started dating. A montage of memories from his past life flashes by: their wedding day, the birth of their child, and the simple joys of their life together. The happy memories give way to the tragic end of that life, a devastating car crash. He vividly remembers Saki's last words, her concern only for his well-being as she faded away. Though he was miraculously unharmed, he knew he couldn't live without Saki, his other half, and he pleaded with a mysterious, winged being to save her. The divine being offered him a pact. In exchange for the remainder of his own life, he would be reincarnated into the same world as Saki in their next lives. He recalls the ethereal, winged figure appearing before him in the wreckage. He had asked the being if it was a god. The entity noted that he still had many years left to live but agreed to his request, cryptically mentioning that it owed him and Saki for their help in its dreams and that refusing his wish would likely turn him into a demon of unprecedented power. When asked what it meant by help, the being explained that it was a poor creator for romantic stories and was handing his and Saki's case over to a colleague who specialized in such things. He remembers caring little for the details, his only desire being to be with Saki again, and he accepted the terms without hesitation. As he held Saki's hand one last time, he passed from that world and was reborn as a prince in the kingdom of Render. He reflects on the profound difficulty of starting over as an infant with the mind of a 43-year-old man. He remembers being held by his new parents, the king and queen, in the opulent royal nursery. The disconnect between his mature consciousness and his infant body was frustrating, but he knew that his past life memories provided an immense advantage. While his parents celebrated his prodigious efforts and rapid development, he knew they would be horrified to learn his true motivation was to secure the power needed to reclaim his lost love, a secret he vowed to take to his grave. He muses that sometimes silence is a virtue, and that keeping certain truths hidden is a part of being an adult. Back in the present, an aide interrupts his thoughts to announce his next appointment, and Ethan instructs him to deliver a stack of documents on his way out. The aide marvels at the sheer volume of work the prince has accomplished, impressed by the detailed, insightful comments added to each report. Ethan then meets with Princess Aaliyah, who greets him warmly and remarks that the sounds of the Magic Division's morning training help keep her senses sharp. She clarifies that she is not being sarcastic. Rather, the constant reminders of combat prevent her from growing complacent. She states that with a formidable enemy plotting against her, she cannot afford a moment of peace until her revenge is complete, and Ethan agrees that it is time for them to exchange information. His expression is grim and focused as they begin their strategic discussion. Ethan asks a blunt question, requesting to know everything about her mother's miracle of substitution and how to evade a curse master's magic. Princess Aaliyah's gaze intensifies as she prepares to answer. She warns him that to fully understand, she must recount the bloody and violent history of her kingdom's succession wars, asking if he is truly prepared for such a grim tale. Ethan resolutely affirms that he is ready to hear and accept whatever she has to say. She begins her story, explaining that her mother, the true queen, was murdered as her substitute, allowing the second consort to usurp the throne and push for her own son to be king. Her father, the king of Siam, has challenged her to prove the new queen's guilt herself if she wishes for justice. He told her that such an ordeal would serve as a crucial lesson and a foundation for her future reign as queen. She reveals the harsh reality of her kingdom. Her father would have abandoned her entirely if she had failed to secure the political alliance with Render. As in Siam, even family is disposable if they lack utility, a truth her mother understood and which drove her to learn sorcery for self-preservation. Ethan has a dawning realization. The so-called miracle was not a beautiful act of love, but was in fact a form of curse magic. Aaliyah confirms his suspicion, explaining that the spell requires two components: the caster's obsessive desire to protect someone, and a living sacrifice to absorb the curse's dark energy. She then poses a chilling question to Ethan. If he were to use such a spell, who would he choose to kill as the sacrifice? Ethan understands the grim calculus of the magic, noting that while it is effective, its reliance on a sacrifice makes it incredibly difficult to use ethically or practically. Changing the subject, Aaliyah inquires about his strained relationship with his own father, but Ethan assures her it is not a matter for concern. His gaze remains steady, his resolve unshaken by the dark revelations. He sees in Aaliyah's eyes the same burning desire for revenge that he felt after Saki's death, the unresolved anger at the one who took his most precious person away. This shared experience creates a bond between them, and Aaliyah, sensing this, asks if she may pose a personal question of her own. She bluntly asks if the rumors are true and if his romantic preferences are for men, a question that leaves Ethan momentarily speechless. She explains her reasoning. As a future queen, she must marry someone from her own country, so she needed a fake fiancé who would be guaranteed to annul the marriage without complications. The widespread rumors that his true soulmate was a man made him the ideal, risk-free candidate for her political scheme. Ethan finds himself unable to outright deny the rumor, as he knows his own actions have given it credence, however mistaken the conclusion may be. He thinks back on his life in this world, remembering the endless string of marriage proposals from noblewomen that he has systematically rejected. Instead of socializing, he has dedicated his time to rigorous training, avoiding social events and limiting his interactions with women to the bare minimum required by duty. Aaliyah confirms that it was precisely this reputation that led her to propose their mutually beneficial fake engagement. The scene shifts to Rebecca's estate, where a maid excitedly shares gossip with her mistress. She recounts rumors of Prince Ethan's formidable nature, even dismissing his own tutors, and how he continues to impress everyone. Another maid chimes in that he still shuns the company of other women, suggesting his feelings for Rebecca must be incredibly powerful and true. Rebecca blushes at the praise for her shuchan, affirming that of course his feelings are true, before playfully shooing the maids away to help her prepare for the exhibition. Meanwhile, back at the Aliana temple, the atmosphere is far less cheerful. A distraught Charlotte vents her frustrations to Keith, crying that Clarissa will never acknowledge her, no matter how hard she tries. Keith attempts to soothe her as she declares that she hates everything and can't take the constant criticism anymore. He pulls her close, kisses her, and whispers for her to trust him, promising that she will become a wonderful lady and everything will turn out well. A close-up on Keith's eyes reveals a cold, calculating look that belies his gentle words. He smiles down at a blushing and hopeful Charlotte, his true intentions hidden behind a mask of comfort and affection.